Where where does digestion start? All right, so the thing about mouthwash, all right, we talked about mouthwash. We're going to be talking about also lactose intolerance. Where does it come from? And why are so many people today lactose intolerant? So the deal about mouthwash is that we have certain microbes in our mouth, and digestion does start in the mouth. And those microbes produce nitric oxide. Now, when we allow the mouthwash to come into the mouth, and then it does supposed to quote unquote do a cleansing because of the menthol and different eucalyptus. Well, there's some issues with that, okay? So when you're talking about the salivary glands in the mouth, you have ptyalin, lingual lipase, and amylase. Now, these right here, these break down starch. They also break down saturated fat. So the digestion starts right there in the mouth. As it's breaking it down, you have those enzymes that's doing a wonderful job, and then it goes to the gastrointestinal tract. Now, maybe next Monday, we're going to pick up right where this starts and where it ends, where those pancreatic enzymes. So the pancreas does a lot of wonderful things that we talked about before, but the pancreatic enzyme is going to push out more sodium bicarbonate in order to change that acid level from the stomach as it's passing into the duodenum or the small intestines. It changes that acid level into alkaline. So that's one of those things that the pancreas also does on top of different types of pancreatic enzymes like trypsin. So the saturated fat is being broken down. Starch is being broken down, starting right there in the mouth. But when we put mouthwash, it's going to destroy and kill not only the enzymes, not only the good bacteria, the oral good bacteria, but it's also going to kill and to stop the production of nitric oxide. Now, what's the deal about that? Nitric oxide, as it starts in the mouth, and of course, it's in your tissues, it's going to allow your smooth muscle cells to relax. And the more they're relaxed, guess what happens? Your arteries are going to be dilated, all right? But unfortunately, when nitric oxide is, you lose the production or inhibited, you're going to constrict your arteries. And mouthwash, people use it over and over, at least twice a day. One of those issues stripping away from nitric oxide or the production of nitric oxide is mouthwash. So yes, people use it in the morning as a refresher and so forth, but when you use it too much, and then there's all types of generic brands out there. You can get mouthwash for $1, a big old can, not a can of it, but a big old jar of mouthwash for $1. There's the issue. It's going to be too much, too readily available, heavily used, way too much, and therefore it's also going to cause high blood pressure. So you got high blood pressure. Nitric oxide is not good for diabetics because diabetics need the arteries to be dilated. All of these issues come from mouthwash. Now look at this right here. Let me show you this right here. So here it is. These are some of the already normal components of mouthwash, and some of them you're very familiar with, okay? And we're just going to look at a few of them. You have alcohol. If you look at alcohol on the inactive ingredients, all right, you have active ingredients, you have inactive ingredients. Look at the percentage of the active ingredients. So let me tell you the difference between active and inactive. Active ingredients means that's the therapeutic effect that you're going to receive when you put the mouthwash in. So you want that, that minty flavor. But look at this: eucalyptol, 0.092%. And true, you can't use certain essential oils heavily. And there's some that you can't put in your system at all. It's good for aroma, but you can't put it in. At the same time, there are some that you can actually use, like menthol. So menthol, these are good, and thymol, that comes from the plant thyme. And then of course, eucalyptol comes from the eucalyptic plant, so a eucalyptus plant. So these right here, they're good when you use them more naturally. And now you look at the inactive ingredients. Look, water and alcohol, 26.9%. Now, I guarantee you this. Out of that 26.9%, it's not heavily water. It's not heavily water. So right there, that's another reason, you know what alcohol does to the system. And this is no different. This is no different. Yes, it's so readily available, but it's still alcohol. So we're looking at these. And then, of course, you have alcohol, chlorine dioxide. These are detergents. And for formaldehyde. You probably already know when you've seen formaldehyde, you say, wait a minute, don't they use that for embalming? Yes, they use formaldehyde for embalming. Now, let me give you a hint. Well, not a hint, but let me give you a quick tip here. If you ever seen those green juices, and one of them is called Naked, okay? And they sell the green juice, and they have like, you know, different celery and apple and all those things. They have formaldehyde in it. This was actually in the news some years ago. So why do they use formaldehyde for embalming? Well, they use it because what it does is a chemical, and at room temperature, it is a gas. And because they pump it in when someone dies, in order for them to be visible at the funeral, it actually destroys the bacteria that's going to start the decomposing process. So that person can look a little fresh for about 2 to 3 days until that funeral. And if they put too much in, I mean, it can last for about 2 weeks. So that is used in embalming, which we should not be using in our system whatsoever, because again, these things are going to destroy the production of nitric oxide in your system, and it's going to destroy the production of certain enzymes, especially when it's breaking down what we're about to talk about shortly, which is milk sugar. So let's look at this. Talking about something that's breaking down the inner walls of your arteries, the inner walls in the stomach, and the duodenum, which are the small intestines. I want you to look at this right here. Now, this right here is wheat, which is also called gluten. Gluten comes from two words, as you see right here, gliadin and glutenine. So gliadin and glutenine, those are the proteins in wheat, and you put them together, you have gluten. Here's the problem. Gliadin is toxic, especially with this hybridized wheat that Mr. Norman Borlaug came about in the 1970s. And because it's so hybridized, that gliadin has been causing issues for years, literally for years. And people become lactose intolerant, and they have other issues that come from eating that wheat and that gliadin, because it literally doesn't go well with the villi inside of the small intestines. It's just like formaldehyde. Formaldehyde, it actually irritates the mucosal lining of the stomach. So when the mucosal lining of the stomach is irritated over the years, because people are still putting in certain things that they're not aware is destroying that mucosal lining, now the mucosal lining is actually producing that mucus in order to protect it from the hydrochloric acid inside the stomach. And there you have leaky gut, you have ulcers, you have all types of issues from that, okay? Now, on top of the gliadin, with the mucosal lining, it's also destroying the villi inside of the small intestines. So look at this right here. Let's look at the gastric juices. There's the mucosal lining, almost look like villi, but not quite. Now, the mucosal, it also has sodium benzoate. It breaks down the mucus, allows mucus in order for your protection from the hydrochloric acid, which is very acidic with the potassium chloride and the sodium chloride inside of the walls of your heart and your stomach. So all of these are going to be issues that we're dealing with when we, number one, mess up the beginning phase of the digestion by putting in that mouthwash. That's no good. You can make your own mouthwash, and we're going to talk about that when we stop for comments, questions, or concerns. Now look at this. There's something else that comes about. This right here is a little bit different. So let me show you something. Look at the mucosal lining. And this is a little bit different right here when you look at the villi. The mucosal lining is in the stomach. The villi is going to be in the duodenum, or the small intestines. Now, you see those fingers? You see those finger-like microbes right there? They look like this right here. They are actually responsible for the absorption of the nutrients when your food is broken down to go through your system to the liver and then distribute it throughout your body. But look what happens when gliadin and different things come into your system. It actually deteriorates and damages the villi to the point where those microbes, that villi is no longer able to break down the food, absorb it, and break it through the blood barrier in order to be utilized throughout the body. So now what do we have? We have undigested food into your bloodstream, and I'm going to tell you what's caused from that. Look at this right here. Lactose intolerance, just a little bit. There's other issues, but lactose intolerance. Now, look what happens when people are lactose intolerant. Now, remember this. The villi is completely damaged. And look at this right here. When people drink milk, now, drinking milk alone, we're talking about cow's milk. If you're going to drink the milk, please make sure that it is grass-fed. Now, I wouldn't recommend the milk, period. But if you're going to drink it, or if you want to eat, meat, make sure that it's grass-fed. Now, look at this. Lactose. Now, you already know the different sugars, milk sugars, lactose. And then, of course, you got fructose, you got sucrose, galactose, glucose. So lactose is a combination of glucose and galactose. Now, here's what's happening. Look at this. Here is normal digestion, right here, normal digestion. That means the lactose goes in, the enzyme lactase, it separates those two sugars, it breaks it down to glucose and galactose, and now the body can use it as energy because it's broken down the blood sugar. However, look at over here, what's happening over here. So over here, when someone is lactose intolerant, that means that over the years, doing certain things like mouthwash, doing these things where we are just not aware of, over time, we see the results of it. Here's the result. Lactose is not broken down. It's not broken down whatsoever. And as it's going into the colon, because it's not broken down, it's absorbing water. So it's retaining and absorbing the water, as you see right here, plus H2O. So it's increasing, retaining water. And as it's retaining the water, unfortunately, it's not breaking down the glucose and the galactose. And as it's retaining and it's sitting right there in the colon, it starts to ferment. That's where gas comes from because of the fermentation process. As it starts to ferment, you're also not only going to have gas, but you're going to have abdominal cramping, okay? So you're going to have bloating. So all of these things are going to be issues. You have celiac disease, leaky gut, and of course, because you're not able to absorb certain nutrients, and it's going to inhibit the absorption of iron at the same time, you're going to have other issues as well, like Hashimoto's. All these issues come about from the things that we thought we were doing correctly, but we just got to get an understanding of what ingredients are actually in these things that we've been putting into our system all this time. So we're going to talk about what can we do in order to fix all of these issues. And we'll pick up right here. Next Monday, we'll pick up right here with the pancreatic enzymes. Remember, we've seen amylase, we've seen lingual lipase when we talked about where digestion starts. But then this one right here is trypsin. And we're going to see, well, wait a minute, trypsin, that is going to be something that is used to break down protein. That's going to be used to break down protein. So the body is a wonderful tool, always working to keep us alive. Let's make sure that we do right by the body. All right. We're going to stop for questions, comments, or concerns, and we'll see you next Monday.